The great fortress of King Dohyun hung in the empty space between stars. It was made of shining metal that caught the light of faraway suns. For hundreds of years, the Dragon King had ruled over many worlds. His scales were black as night, and his eyes held the wisdom of ages. Everyone knew of his famous test: beat the challenge, become his champion, and gain endless life and great power. Taehyung swept the floor of the grand hall, trying not to be noticed. He wore the plain gray clothes of the human workers. He kept his head down as he worked. The latest warrior to try the test, a strong fighter named Kang with 7 arms, now lay on the floor. He had failed, just like all the others before him. "Another failure," said King Do-yun with a deep voice that filled the room. The Dragon King shifted his huge body on his throne. "Take him away." Guards picked up the fallen warrior and carried him out. Taehyung kept sweeping, careful not to look up. He was only a stable boy who took care of the animals in the king's collection. Humans were not common in this part of space. After Earth was destroyed long ago, humans had spread across the stars, mostly working as servants. Taehyung thought about the animals he cared for. There were strange beasts from many worlds, hunters with 6 legs from giant gas planets, creatures made of crystal that ate light, and even 2 horses from Earth, maybe the last ones alive. He loved all the animals and talked to them when no one was around. Without thinking, Taehyung smiled at a funny thought that crossed his mind. "You there, human." The Dragon King's voice made Taehyung freeze in place. "Do you find something funny?" Taehyung looked up in fear, suddenly aware that the king was watching him. "No, Your Majesty. I'm sorry." The Dragon King lowered his massive head until one huge eye was level with Taehyung. The eye was bigger than Taehyung's whole body, golden with a black slit in the middle. "You lie poorly, little human," said the king. "Tell me what made you smile, or you will join the others who have failed." Taehyung swallowed hard. He had come to this place 3 years ago after space pirates attacked his home. He was 22 years old now, and had spent most of his life caring for animals. First at the farming dome of New Seoul, and now here among the king's exotic creatures. The whole court was silent, watching him. Lords and ladies from 100 worlds stared at the simple human who had caught the king's attention. Some looked curious, others seemed to enjoy seeing someone in trouble. "I was thinking about the star dancer in your collection, Your Majesty," Taehyung finally said. His voice was quiet but steady. "The star dancer?" The king's head tilted slightly. "Explain." Taehyung took a deep breath. "All these warriors come here with their weapons and armor. They try to show how strong they are. But the star dancer is just a cloud of gas that changes colors when it's happy. It doesn't try to be anything else. I thought it was funny that the simplest creature in your collection seems happier than all these champions." A terrible silence fell over the court. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the air seemed to stop. Then something strange happened. The Dragon King's inner eyelids slid sideways across his golden eyes. Was he blinking in surprise? "Approach," commanded King Do-yun. Taehyung walked forward on shaking legs. Each step felt heavy. The Dragon King could crush him with one claw if he wanted to. "You care for my beasts?" asked the king. "Yes, Your Majesty." "They're beautiful. And what do you know of my test? The challenge these warriors fail?" Taehyung shook his head. "Nothing, Your Majesty. I'm not allowed in the testing chamber." The Dragon King nodded his massive head. "The test is simple. I ask each warrior to show me something I have never seen before. In 10,000 years I have traveled to the edges of the universe. I have watched stars be born and die. What could possibly surprise me?" Taehyung blinked. "That's the test? Just show you something new?" "Yes, and now, little human, you will try it too." "But I'm not a warrior," Taehyung said, panic in his voice. "I'm just a stable boy." "You are what you are," said the Dragon King, "and that may be why you might succeed where others have failed. You have 1 day to prepare. Come back tomorrow with something I have never seen or join those who have failed." The court began to whisper. A human taking the test? It was unheard of. Advisor Jiwoo, the king's chief scientist, stepped forward. She was tall and thin with scales that shimmered blue in the light. "Your Majesty, this is most unusual. The human is not trained or prepared. Neither are the stars prepared to explode, yet they do so beautifully," said the king. "I am curious what this one will bring." Taehyung stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. Yesterday he had been cleaning animal cages. Today he faced a challenge that the greatest warriors in the galaxy had failed. "You may go, human," said the king. "Use your time wisely." Taehyung bowed low and backed away. His mind raced. What could he possibly show the Dragon King that he had never seen before? As he left the grand hall, he heard the whispers of the court. The human will fail. The king is playing with him. Perhaps he will be food for the beasts he tends. Taehyung hurried back to the safety of the menagerie. The familiar sounds and smells calmed him. The six-legged hunters paced in their cages. The crystal beings hummed softly. The horses nickered when they saw him. "What am I going to do?" he asked the animals. "How can I show him something new?" The star dancer floated in its clear container, changing from blue to purple to gold. It didn't worry about tests or kings. It just was. Taehyung sat down beside the star dancer's cage and watched it change colors. An idea began to form in his mind. Maybe the answer wasn't to find something the king had never seen. Maybe it was to help the king see something familiar in a new way. He stood up with new purpose. He would need help and he would need courage. But for the first time since the king had called on him, Taehyung felt a small spark of hope. The Dragon King wanted to see something new. Taehyung would show him the oldest thing of all, but from a perspective the king had never considered. As night fell across the fortress, Taehyung began to plan. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another. Night fell across the Dragon King's fortress. Most of the court had gone to sleep, but Taehyung couldn't rest. He paced between the animal cages, thinking hard about the test. The soft lights of the menagerie cast long shadows on the floor. What can I show him that he's never seen before? Taehyung asked the horses. They watched him with their big brown eyes but offered no answers. The menagerie was huge, taking up an entire level of the fortress. It held creatures from hundreds of worlds. Some were fierce hunters, others gentle plant eaters. Some could fly, others swam, and some did things humans had no words for. King Dohyun had collected them all during his long life. Taehyung stopped in front of the star dancer's cage. The gas creature floated peacefully, its colors shifting from deep blue to soft pink. It had no brain as humans understood it, yet it seemed aware in its own way. When Taehyung came near, it always moved toward him. "You don't worry about anything, do you?" he said to the star dancer. "You just are. Talking to the animals again?" a voice said from behind him. Taehyung turned quickly. Advisor Jiwoo stood in the doorway, her tall form outlined by the light from the hall. The king's chief scientist rarely came to the menagerie. "Advisor Jiwoo," Taehyung bowed low. "I didn't hear you come in." She walked toward him, her movements smooth and graceful. Her scales caught the light as she moved. "The whole fortress is talking about you, human." The stable boy who caught the king's attention. Taehyung looked down. "I didn't mean to. Yet here you are facing the test." She stopped beside him and looked at the star dancer. "Many have tried. The greatest minds in the galaxy have failed. Why is he doing this?" Taehyung asked. "Why me? I'm nobody." Jiwoo studied him with her golden eyes. "Perhaps that is exactly why. The king grows tired of warriors and their predictable attempts to impress him. But I can't show him anything new," Taehyung said. "He's lived for thousands of years. He's seen everything, has he?" Jiwoo asked. She reached out one long finger and touched the glass of the star dancer's cage. The creature moved toward her touch. "Or has he only seen what he expects to see?" Taehyung frowned. "What do you mean?" "The king has lived so long that he believes he knows all there is to know," Jiwoo said. "But sometimes the most surprising things are not new objects but new ways of seeing." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Perhaps you should not try to show him something external at all." With those words, she was gone, leaving Taehyung alone with the animals and his thoughts. He sat down on the floor, leaning against the wall. What had Jiwoo meant? Not something external? What else could he show the king? Taehyung closed his eyes and thought about King Dohyun. The Dragon King was ancient and powerful. He had seen stars born and die. He had traveled to the edges of the universe. What could possibly surprise him? Then Taehyung remembered something. 3 months ago, he had been cleaning the cages late at night when the king had come to the menagerie alone. Taehyung had hidden, not wanting to disturb him. He had watched as the mighty Dragon King stood before the star dancer's cage, his massive form somehow looking smaller in the dim light. The king had spoken softly to the gas creature. "At least you are honest in what you are," he had said. "You do not pretend or lie to gain favor." Then the king had done something surprising. He had taken a small vial from his robes and sprinkled its contents into the Star Dancer's feeding tube. It was a special treat, a rare gas that made the Star Dancer glow with happiness. The king had watched the creature change colors, and for a moment Tahung thought he saw the king smile. Tahung opened his eyes. That was it. The king wasn't just a fearsome ruler. He was a being who cared for his creatures, who came alone in the night to give them treats. He was more than just the Dragon King. He was Do-hyun, who had feelings and thoughts that no one ever saw. Taehyung jumped to his feet. He had an idea, but he would need help, and he knew just who to ask. Morning came too quickly. Taehyung had worked through the night, and now he stood outside the grand hall, waiting to be called in for the test. His heart beat fast in his chest. His hands were sweaty. The king will see you now, said a guard, opening the huge doors. Taehyung walked into the grand hall. It seemed even bigger today, filled with people from across the galaxy. They had all come to see the human fail the test. Lords and ladies in fine clothes whispered as he passed. Warriors with strange weapons watched with cold eyes. King Do-hyun sat on his massive throne at the far end of the hall. His black scales shone in the light from the tall windows. His golden eyes fixed on Taehyung as he approached. Human. The king's voice rumbled through the hall. You have come to face my test. Taehyung bowed low. Yes, your majesty. Many have tried. All have failed. The king leaned forward. Show me something I have never seen before. Taehyung took a deep breath. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a holographic projector that Jiwoo had helped him program during the night. Your majesty, Taehyung said, his voice steadier than he expected. I cannot show you a new star or a strange creature or a weapon no one has made before. The crowd began to whisper. Was the human giving up already? But, Taehyung continued, I can show you something you have never seen, though it has always been with you. The king's eyes narrowed. Explain. I bring you yourself, your majesty, as seen through my eyes. Taehyung activated the projector. A beam of light shot out, forming a clear image in the air between him and the king. It showed King Do-hyun, but not as the court saw him now. This was the king as Taehyung had seen him that night in the menagerie, gently feeding the Star Dancer. The image changed. Now it showed the king standing alone by a window, looking out at the stars with what seemed like loneliness in his ancient eyes. Another change. The king practicing speeches when he thought no one was watching, trying different tones and expressions like an actor learning a part. The king asleep on his throne, his fearsome head resting on one massive claw, looking almost peaceful. The king laughing at something a courtier said, then quickly hiding his amusement behind a stern face. The images kept changing, showing moments Taehyung had seen during his 3 years at the fortress, moments when the king was not performing the role of the Dragon King, but was simply Do-hyun. This is how I see you, Taehyung said softly, not just as the Dragon King who rules many worlds, but as Do-hyun, who loves his creatures and watches the stars and sometimes feels alone, just like the rest of us. A deep silence fell over the court. No one moved. No one spoke. All eyes were on the king. King Do-hyun stared at the images, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he rose from his throne. He was so tall that his head nearly touched the high ceiling. In 10,000 years, he said, his voice quieter than before, no one has ever shown me myself through kind eyes. The grand hall was completely silent. Everyone held their breath as they watched King Do-hyun stare at the images floating in the air. The Dragon King's face showed no emotion, but his golden eyes never left the hologram. Taehyung stood very still. Had he made a terrible mistake? Would the king be angry that a simple human had watched him in private moments? His heart beat so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. Then something amazing happened. The corner of the Dragon King's mouth twitched. Just a small movement at first. Then his lips parted, showing teeth as long as Taehyung's arm. A strange sound came from deep in the king's chest. It started as a low rumble like distant thunder. The rumble grew louder. It shook the floor beneath their feet. The crystal windows vibrated. And suddenly, everyone realized what was happening. The Dragon King was laughing. It was a deep, rich sound that filled the entire hall. King Do-hyun threw back his massive head and laughed like he hadn't laughed in centuries. His whole body shook with it. Tears formed in his golden eyes. The court watched in shock. No one living had ever heard the Dragon King laugh like this. Some of the older courtiers whispered that it had been at least 500 years since anyone had seen the king show such joy. In 10,000 years, King Dohyun said when he finally caught his breath, "No one has ever made me laugh like that." He looked down at Taehyung, who still stood frozen in place. "Tell me, human, how did you know this would work? How did you know this would be something I had never seen?" Taehyung swallowed hard. "I didn't know, Your Majesty. I just thought. Everyone sees themselves from the inside. We never truly see how others see us." The king nodded slowly. "Wise words from one so young. And how did you get these images?" "My guards watch me always." "Not in the menagerie, Your Majesty," Taehyung said. "I've seen you there many times when you thought you were alone. An advisor Jiwoo helped me access some security recordings." All eyes turned to Jiwoo, who stood calmly at the side of the hall. She bowed to the king. "The human came to me with an interesting idea, Your Majesty," she said. "I thought it worthy of your consideration." King Dohyun studied her for a moment, then turned back to Taehyung. "You have succeeded where all others failed, human. You have shown me something I have never seen before. Myself through the eyes of another. Not as a fearsome king, but as a being with feelings and small moments of weakness." He stepped down from his throne, moving closer to Taehyung. The king was so large that Taehyung had to tilt his head back to see his face. "You did not try to impress me with strength or cleverness," the king continued. "Instead, you showed me truth. And in doing so, you have passed my test." A murmur ran through the crowd. The human had passed? It seemed impossible. "Your Majesty," said a tall warrior near the front. He wore armor made of black metal and carried a sword that glowed with strange energy. "Surely you don't mean to make this servant your champion? He is not a warrior. He has no skills in battle." The king turned his golden eyes to the warrior. "And what good have your battle skills done you, Lord Minho? You failed my test, as did all the others who came with weapons and armor." The king looked back at Taehyung. "This human has shown more courage than any warrior. He stood before me with nothing but truth, knowing I could destroy him with a single breath." King Dohyun raised his voice so all could hear. "Taehyung of Earth, you are my champion." The words echoed through the hall. Taehyung couldn't believe what he was hearing. Him, the champion of the Dragon King? It didn't seem possible. "But Your Majesty," he said, his voice shaking, "I don't know how to be a champion. I only know how to care for animals." The king's eyes softened. "Perhaps that is exactly what makes you worthy. You care for creatures that cannot reward you. You see beauty in things others ignore. These are rare qualities in any being." King Dohyun turned to address the court. "For too long I have sought a champion who could match me in power or cunning. I thought such a being would understand my loneliness. But this human has shown me that understanding comes not from being alike, but from seeing truly." The king raised one massive claw and gently, so gently it was hard to believe, touched Taehyung's shoulder. "From this day forward, Taehyung of Earth will be my voice among the stars. He will speak with my authority. Any who harm him harm me. Any who help him earn my favor." The court bowed low, though many faces showed confusion or anger. A human as the Dragon King's champion. It went against everything they believed about power and worth. Advisor Jiwoo stepped forward. "The ceremony must be performed, Your Majesty. The ancient rites must be observed." The king nodded. "Prepare the Chamber of Stars. We will conduct the ritual at sunset." As the court began to move, following Jiwoo's directions, King Dohyun leaned down to speak quietly to Taehyung. "Are you afraid, human?" Taehyung nodded. There was no point lying to the king. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Very afraid. Good," said the king. "Fear keeps us wise. But know this. I chose you not just because you made me laugh, but because you saw me as I am. Few have ever looked past my scales to see the being beneath." "What will happen now?" Taehyung asked. "Now you will become something more than human," the king said. "The ritual will change you. It will give you long life and certain powers, but it will not change who you are inside. That is why the choice of champion is so important." Taehyung thought about the animals in the menagerie. Who would care for them if he became the king's champion? As if reading his thoughts, the king said, "You may still visit your animals. In fact, I would like you to show me how you care for them. Perhaps there are things I could learn from your methods." For the first time since entering the grand hall, Taehyung smiled. "I would like that, Your Majesty." The king's eyes crinkled at the corners. "You have a good smile, human. I think you will bring much-needed light to my court." As they walked together toward the Chamber of Stars, people moved quickly out of their way. No one had ever seen the Dragon King walk side by side with anyone, let alone a human servant. But Taehyung was no longer a servant. He was the champion of the Dragon King, chosen not for his strength or skill in battle, but for his ability to see truth and share it with courage. And as word spread throughout the fortress and beyond to the 1,000 worlds of the stellar dominion, the story grew. How every warrior had failed the Dragon King's test, until a human stable boy made him laugh. The Chamber of Stars was the most beautiful room Taehyung had ever seen. The walls, floor, and ceiling were made of a clear material that showed the space outside the fortress. It felt like standing in empty space with nothing between you and the stars. Taehyung walked slowly into the center of the room. His legs felt weak. His mouth was dry. Around the edges of the chamber stood the most important people in the Dragon King's court. They watched him with curious eyes. "Are you ready, human?" asked King Do-hyun. The Dragon King stood tall at the far end of the room. He wore special robes for this ceremony, deep blue with silver stars that seemed to move when he did. "I don't know what to be ready for, Your Majesty," Taehyung answered honestly. The king nodded. "Few do. The ritual of the champion has not been performed in over 1,000 years." This news made Taehyung even more nervous. He looked around at the watching faces. Most seemed doubtful. Some looked angry. Only advisor Jiwoo gave him a small nod of encouragement. "The last champion was a great warrior from the fire world, so," said an old lord with gray scales. "He served the king for 800 years before he fell in the Battle of Three Suns. How can this human compare to such greatness?" "He cannot," said King Do-hyun, "nor should he try. Each champion brings different gifts." The king moved to the center of the room where Taehyung stood. He seemed even larger in this space, his black scales reflecting the starlight. "The ritual has 3 parts," the king explained. "First, you must give up something you value. Then you must take something new into yourself. Finally, you must be changed by the power of the stars." Taehyung swallowed hard. "What must I give up?" "That is for you to decide," said the king. "But choose carefully. It must be something that truly matters to you." Taehyung thought about his life. He didn't own much. His family was long gone, killed when Earth was destroyed. What did he value? Then he knew. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of cloth. It was a handkerchief that had belonged to his mother. It was the only thing he had from Earth, from his old life. "This was my mother's," he said, his voice soft. "It's all I have left of her." The king looked at the simple cloth. "Are you certain? This seems a small thing to give up." "It's not small to me," Taehyung said. "It's my last connection to who I was before." The king nodded slowly. "Then it is a worthy sacrifice." Taehyung placed the handkerchief in a small silver bowl that advisor Jiwoo brought forward. The king touched it with one claw and the cloth burst into blue flame. It burned quickly, leaving only ash. "The past is gone," said the king. "Now you must take something new into yourself." Jiwoo stepped forward again. This time she carried a crystal cup filled with a glowing liquid that shifted colors like the star dancer. "This is the essence of stars," the king explained. "It contains the light of 1,000 suns. Drink it, and part of the universe will live inside you." Taehyung took the cup with shaking hands. The liquid inside moved on its own, swirling with colors he had no names for. "Will it hurt?" he asked. "Yes," said the king simply. "Change always does." Taehyung looked at the cup, then at the faces watching him. He could still walk away. He could go back to the menagerie, back to his simple life caring for animals. No one would blame him. But then he thought of the king's laughter. He thought of the loneliness he had seen in those ancient eyes. He thought of all the worlds in the stellar dominion that might benefit from a different kind of champion. Taehyung raised the cup to his lips and drank. The liquid burned like fire going down his throat. It spread through his body in waves of heat and cold. Taehyung gasped and fell to his knees. The cup clattered to the floor. "It burns," he cried out. "Let it," said the king. "The fire remakes you. Taehyung felt like his body was being pulled apart and put back together. He saw strange visions, stars being born, planets forming, life growing from nothing. He saw the history of the universe flash before his eyes, and through it all he felt the king's presence, steady and strong, guiding him through the pain. "Now for the final part," the king said. His voice seemed to come from very far away. "The power of the stars must change you." The king raised his massive claws toward the ceiling. The clear material that separated them from space seemed to melt away. Suddenly the light of 1,000,000 stars poured into the room, focusing on Taehyung. The starlight wrapped around him like a blanket. It sank into his skin, his eyes, his very bones. Taehyung felt himself changing, not just his body, but his mind too. He could suddenly understand things that had made no sense before. He could feel the movement of planets and the birth of stars. The pain was gone now, replaced by a strange feeling of peace. Taehyung stood up slowly. He felt different, stronger. His senses were sharper. He could hear the heartbeats of everyone in the room. "It is done," said King Dohyun. "Look at yourself, champion." Jiwoo brought forward a mirror. Taehyung looked at his reflection and gasped. He still looked human, but his eyes had changed. They now glowed with an inner light, shifting colors like the star dancer. His skin seemed to shine faintly in the dark. "What happened to me?" he asked. Even his voice sounded different, deeper and more musical. "You have become more than human," said the king. "You will live for centuries. You will not age or sicken as others do. You can understand all languages of the stellar dominion, and you can see things others cannot. The truth behind masks, the light in darkness." Taehyung looked at his hands. They looked the same, but he could feel new strength in them. "Why me?" he asked. "Out of all the beings in your realm, why choose a human stable boy?" The king was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because you showed me what I had forgotten, that true power comes not from strength or fear, but from understanding and kindness." He placed one massive claw gently on Taehyung's shoulder. "For too long, I have ruled through fear. The warriors who came to take my test wanted power for themselves, but you wanted nothing except to care for creatures that could not reward you." The king turned to address the court. "This is my champion. He will speak with my voice. He will travel to all worlds in the Dominion, bringing not conquest, but understanding." Many in the court looked confused. This was not the kind of champion they had expected, but no one dared question the Dragon King's choice. "What must I do now?" Taehyung asked. "First, rest," said the king. "The change is hard on the body and mind. Tomorrow we will begin your training." As the ceremony ended, people came forward to bow to Taehyung. Some seemed sincere, others clearly just following protocol. The tall warrior, Lord Minho, gave him a cold look before bowing stiffly. "Not everyone will accept you easily," Jiwoo said quietly as she walked with Taehyung back to his quarters. "Some believe only warriors can be champions." "I'm not a warrior," Taehyung said. "No," she agreed. "You are something much rarer. You are kind in a universe that values strength. That makes you dangerous to some." Taehyung's new quarters were large and beautiful, nothing like the small room he had lived in before. There were windows that showed the stars and soft furniture that adjusted to his body. But as he stood alone in this new place, Taehyung felt a moment of doubt. Had he made the right choice? Could he really be the champion the king wanted? He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. With his new vision, he could see things he never had before, the colors of distant suns, the movement of space itself. "I don't know if I can do this," he said softly to the stars. "That is why you will succeed," said a deep voice behind him. Taehyung turned to see King Dohyun standing in the doorway. The Dragon King had come alone without guards or advisors. "Those who are certain of their greatness rarely achieve it," the king said. "It is those who doubt, who question, who grow to become truly great." The king moved to stand beside Taehyung at the window. Together they looked out at the universe. "We begin a new chapter in the history of the stellar dominion," said the king. "One written not with the blood of conquest, but with the light of understanding. For the first time since the ceremony, Tahung smiled. Perhaps he could do this after all. Not by trying to be like the warriors who had failed, but by being exactly who he was, the human stable boy who had made the Dragon King laugh. 1 year had passed since Tahung became the Dragon King's champion. The fortress that once felt so strange to him now felt like home. His new life was very different from his old one. Today, Tahung stood on the bridge of a royal ship, looking down at a planet called Mira. It was a beautiful world with 3 moons and oceans that glowed at night. The people there were having troubles with pirates, and King Dohyun had sent Tahung to help. "We are ready to land, champion," said Captain Hyuk, the ship's leader. He was tall with blue scales and had not liked Tahung at first. Now they were friends. "Thank you, Captain," Tahung said. "Let's hope this goes better than our last visit to Talon." Hyuk made a face. On Talon, the local leaders had refused to believe that a human could be the Dragon King's champion. They had tried to capture Tahung and send a message to King Dohyun asking for a real champion. That had not ended well for them. "The people of Mira are more open-minded," Hyuk said, "and they need our help badly." The ship landed in a field outside the main city. A group of local leaders waited to meet them. They looked nervous but hopeful. Tahung stepped off the ship wearing the special clothes of the champion. They were made of a material that shifted colors like his eyes, showing blues and purples and golds as he moved. Around his neck hung the Dragon King's seal, a small black scale on a silver chain. "Welcome to Mira, champion," said an older woman with long white hair. She bowed low. "I am Elder Suk, leader of our council." "We are honored by your presence," Tahung bowed back. "The honor is mine, Elder. King Dohyun sends his greetings and his promise of help." The people of Mira looked at Tahung with wide eyes. Many had never seen a human before. Some whispered behind their hands. "Is it true?" asked a young man in the crowd. "Did you really make the Dragon King laugh?" Elder Suk looked embarrassed. "Forgive him, champion. The young have not learned proper manners," Tahung smiled. "It's all right. Yes, it's true. Though I didn't plan to. I just showed him something he had never seen before." "What was it?" asked the young man, stepping forward despite the elder's warning look. "Himself," Tahung said simply. "Now tell me about these pirates who trouble your world." As they walked toward the city, Elder Suk explained the problem. Pirates had been attacking Mira's ships and stealing the special crystals that grew only in their oceans. These crystals were Mira's main trade good, and without them the people were growing poor. "We have tried to fight them," said Elder Suk. "But their ships are faster and their weapons are stronger. We are not warriors." "Neither am I," said Tahung. "But sometimes you don't need to be a warrior to solve a problem." They reached the city center, a beautiful place with buildings made of a clear stone that caught the light. In the middle was a pool where some of the ocean crystals grew. They glowed with soft blue light. "These are beautiful," Tahung said, kneeling by the pool. "I can see why they are valuable." "They also heal," said Elder Suk. "When ground into powder, they can cure many sicknesses. That is why the pirates want them. They sell them for high prices in other systems." Tahung thought for a moment. Then he took out a small device and spoke into it. "Advisor Jiwoo, are you there?" The device lit up and Jiwoo's face appeared. "Yes, champion. What do you need?" "Information about pirates in the Mira system, and I need to speak with the king." While they waited for Jiwoo to connect them with King Dohyun, Tahung asked to see the ocean where the crystals grew. Elder Suk took him to the shore. The water glowed with thousands of crystals under the surface. "They are living things," she explained. "They grow only here because our ocean has special minerals they need." Taehyung's device lit up again. This time, the massive face of King Dohyun filled the screen. "Champion," the king said, "you have reached Mira safely?" "Yes, your majesty," Taehyung bowed. "I have a request." He explained the situation with the pirates and his idea for solving it. The king listened carefully, then nodded. "A peaceful solution," he said. "Typical of you, champion. Very well, I approve. The ships will arrive within 2 days." When the call ended, Elder Suk looked at Taehyung with hope. "You have a plan?" "Yes," he said. "But first I need to meet these pirates." The next day, Taehyung stood on a small boat in the middle of the ocean. With him were Captain Hyuk and 3 guards. They had brought a box of crystals and left it open on the deck, the blue glow visible from far away. "This is dangerous," Hyuk said. "The pirates will not care that you are the king's champion." That's what I'm counting on, Taehyung said. They didn't have to wait long. A large black ship appeared on the horizon, moving fast toward them. It was much bigger than their small boat. Here they come, said Hyuk, reaching for his weapon. No weapons, Taehyung reminded him. Not unless I give the signal. The pirate ship pulled alongside their boat. Men with rough faces and many weapons looked down at them. Well, what do we have here? Called a large man with a scar across his face. A gift for us. How kind. I wish to speak with your captain, Taehyung called back. The men laughed. You're speaking to him, pretty boy. Captain Dae, at your service. He gave a mocking bow. I am Taehyung, champion of the Dragon King. I come with an offer. The pirates stopped laughing. They looked at each other nervously. The Dragon King, eh? Captain Dae said. Prove it. Taehyung held up the scale around his neck. It began to glow with black fire, a sign of the king's power. The pirates stepped back. All right, you've made your point, said Captain Dae. What's this offer? Come aboard our boat and we'll talk, Taehyung said. Just you. After some argument, Captain Dae agreed. He climbed down to their boat, one hand on his weapon. Speak quickly, he said. My men are watching. You steal these crystals because they're valuable, Taehyung said. But what if you could have a legal way to trade them? What if you could make more money without the risk of being hunted by the king's ships? Captain Dae narrowed his eyes. I'm listening, Taehyung explained his plan. The Dragon King would give the pirates official permission to transport the crystals from Mira to other worlds that needed them for medicine. They would become traders instead of pirates, with the protection of the king's name. In return, Taehyung said, you stop attacking Mira's ships. You pay the people fairly for their crystals. And you help protect this system from other pirates. Captain Dae laughed. Why would we agree to that? We take what we want now. For how long? Taehyung asked. The king knows you're here now. He could send warships to destroy you. Or you could have a new life with no one hunting you, making honest money. The pirate captain was quiet for a long time. Then he said, my men won't like it. Some won't, Taehyung agreed. Those can leave. But I think most will prefer living without fear of the king's justice. 2 days later, 3 large ships arrived at Mira. They were trading vessels from the Dragon King's fleet, sent to begin the new arrangement. Captain Dae and his men, now called traders instead of pirates, helped load the first shipment of crystals. I still can't believe this worked, Elder Suk said to Taehyung as they watched from the shore. You turned our enemies into partners without a single fight. Sometimes the best solution isn't fighting, Taehyung said. Sometimes it's finding a way for everyone to get what they need. That night there was a celebration in the city. The people of Mira thanked Taehyung with songs and gifts. Captain Dae and his men joined the party, awkward at first but slowly relaxing as they were welcomed. Later, when most people had gone to sleep, Taehyung sat alone by the ocean, watching the crystals glow under the water. He thought about how much his life had changed in just 1 year. Are you happy with your choice? Asked a voice behind him. Taehyung turned to see advisor Jiwoo. She had arrived with the trading ships but had stayed in the background during the negotiations. Yes, he said. Though sometimes I miss the simple life of caring for animals. You still care for creatures, she said, sitting beside him. Just different ones now, Taehyung smiled. I suppose you're right. The king is pleased with your work, Jiwoo said. He says you bring a new kind of peace to the Dominion. I just try to understand what people really need, Taehyung said. Often it's not what they think they want. Like the king, Jiwoo said. He thought he wanted a warrior champion. What he needed was someone who could see him truly. Taehyung looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there was the fortress where the Dragon King waited. The king who had lived for thousands of years, who had seen everything, except himself through kind eyes. Do you know, Taehyung said, the king still comes to the menagerie at night. I saw him there last week talking to the star dancer. Jiwoo smiled. He has changed too. The court says he laughs more now. Good, said Taehyung. Everyone should laugh more. As dawn broke over the ocean, Taehyung stood up. It was time to return to the ship and head to the next world that needed help. This was his life now, traveling the stars as the voice of the Dragon King, bringing understanding where there had been fear. He was no longer just a stable boy. He was the champion who had made the Dragon King laugh. And in doing so, he had changed not just his own fate, but the fate of the entire stellar dominion. As his ship rose into the sky, leaving the glowing oceans of Mira behind, Tahung thought about all the worlds waiting for him, all the problems to solve, all the people to help. And he smiled, his eyes shifting colors like the stars themselves, ready for whatever came next.